Egis, the first shadow Sung Jin-Woo ever named. Egis is a large knight with the typical shadow design with jet black armor, but also has a purple glow surrounding him. He has a tattered cape and a long red ornament strip at his helm that resembles red hair. He also still has a scar on his left eye from his and Jin-Woo's first battle. Egis is a loyal follower and member of his army. Jin-Woo met him during one of his raids and bested the being who was once called Blood Red Commander Egis. After his defeat, Jin-Woo used his shadow extraction skill to make him his shadow and shorten his name to Egis. The greater history, however, is that Sung Jin-Woo's meeting with Egis was no coincidence, but set by the Shadow Monarch to test his successors. It turns out that Egis was once a loyal follower of the original Shadow King Ashborn during his battle against the rulers. As Blood Red Commander, Egis was one of the most formidable shadows Jin-Woo had ever faced, and the one who brought him closest to death. They faced each other when he was the boss of the Job Change Quest dungeon, where Egis immediately started throwing Sung Jin-Woo around like a ragdoll. He came close to ending Sung Jin-Woo until he launched a surprise attack and stabbed the knight in his eye and continued to strike at every unprotected area until he was beaten and then risen again as the Shadow Egis. In terms of power, Egis initially started off as a knight grade shadow and was the strongest of the shadows until Tusk appeared. However, once the truth of Jin-Woo's origins was revealed and he was reborn as the Shadow Monarch, he regained his two powers and jumped up in rank to become a marshal. When he reached that rank, Egis became perhaps the strongest in the Shadow Army, surpassed or equal to by only two others. He is the greatest swordsman in the army thanks to his eons of experience, but he's also pretty impressive without it, as his hand-to-hand fighting skill is just as remarkable that he nearly beat Jin-Woo if it wasn't for a surprise attack. This is only topped off by his remarkable speed and agility, moving around the battlefield in a flash. He also has decent telekinetic ability, like when he tossed Sung Jin-Woo around. In terms of feat, the greatest we could imagine is when Egis battled the Frost Monarch Ciliad, holding him off until Jin-Woo returned. Ciliad is one of the 9 monarchs, the most powerful beings in the series, so Egis goes toe-to-toe with him, and Ciliad even acknowledging his strength is quite impressive. Plus, as a martial grade shadow, he gets a few extra benefits than regular shadows. He has the usual regeneration going for him, allowing him to heal from almost any injury so long as Sung Jin-Woo has mana for it. He can use shadow infiltration, which allows him to sneak into a person's shadow and keep an eye on them and hear their conversations. He can also send a signal to his master if they're in danger. Plus, his new grade has given him the ability to speak, though it is only in the monster's tongue, so Sung Jin-Woo is the only human who can really understand. Tank. The second named shadow that Jin-Woo acquired was Tank. He is the shadow of an ice bear that Sung Jin-Woo fought during the Red Gate incident. As expected, Tank has the general shape of an ice bear with some scratch marks on his eye and an X-shaped scar over his chest. He also happens to be the size of an army tank. While he started off as an elite grade, he eventually leveled up to a knight and is capable of taking on A-rank hunters as well as the usual skills and abilities shadows have, which include regeneration, shadow infiltration, and transformation. He might give off the idea that he's a brute or a wild animal, but he possesses some real cunning and knows how to use his impressive strength. He can plow through an army of demons like they're bowling pins, and he is the world's largest bowling ball. He showed his strategy when he worked with iron to kill a general of Kargalgans. He's even grown so strong that he could destroy a Naga with one hit, and those guys are A-rank monsters at a minimum. Moreover, as an ice bear, he has a connection to the cold, which gives him some pretty impressive resistance to it, and in fact thrives in these environments. His ice aura isn't for show, as it means that all his attacks do some frost damage. Plus, he even has a special ice breath attack which can freeze someone unfortunate enough to be in its firing range. Iron. He is the shadow of Kim Chul, now named Iron after he was kept by Jin-Woo. He is a shadow that wasn't killed by Jin-Woo, but rather by Egis during a battle against Baruka. Feeling like he needed more firepower, Jin-Woo kept Iron by his side and together they managed to defeat the elf. Since then, he hasn't made much of an appearance, but he has leveled up to Elite Knight grade. In his life as Kim Chul, he was very arrogant, and frankly, not all that bright of a man. He shows up during the Red Gate arc when Jin-Woo joins the team heading to what they assumed was a standard gate before it became a red one. Upon discovering this, Kim Chul took charge and made 2 teams with Jin-Woo on the other, putting all the strong ones on his own in order to kill the boss. However, poor leadership resulted in Kim Chul's team being frostbitten, starving, and then killed off by Yetis because they were too weak to defend themselves. This made him rather unstable, which only got worse when he saw Sung Jin-Woo's team fine and happy, causing him to freak out and attack, only to be knocked out by the protagonist. He woke up no less sane and tried to attack him again while he was facing off against the dungeon boss Baruka. Sung Jin-Woo didn't even react, because as soon as Kim Chul got close, Egis appeared and impaled the man with his sword, killing him only to be resurrected as a shadow when Sung Jin-Woo's fight got tough, and he has been with him since. Iron is very similar to how he looked when he was alive, albeit with more of a darker color palette. When he leveled up, his axe became much larger and became rather smoke-like. Iron is easily on the level of an S-rank hunter, and his strength proves it when he kills a giant in one swing or when he drags the head of a Vulcan in one hand. He's capable of some impressive regeneration, can spy on humans with his shadow infiltration, and can even transform. Plus, thanks to Sung Jin-Woo's ascension, all of his shadows are now capable of speech regardless of rank. What makes him rather unique is his berserker ability, Shout of Provocation. As the name implies, Iron shouts and taunts his enemies to attack him, though this does not work against opponents that are stronger. Overall, he serves as an excellent tank for the team. Tusk. Jin-Woo's army had been lacking a certain magical factor. Luckily, he found one in Tusk, the Shadow of Kargalgan, a high orc shaman he defeated during the Hunter's Guild arc. As a general grade shadow, Tusk proved to be an invaluable asset in Jin-Woo's army. Tusk looks like your typical idea of an orc, with his tall frame and the tusks in his mouth, which Jin-Woo named him after. He wears a long black cloak and has a necklace of skulls as an accessory. The thing that really makes him different is the blue and red glow he gives off. As a general shadow, he can speak with ease, regenerate most injuries, sneak into other people's shadows, and transform into a weapon. He also has on him the Orb of Avarice, which can magnify his magical strength. As Jin-Woo's primary spellcaster, he may very well have the largest number of special abilities under his belt, like his gravity magic, which can allow him to lift and slam a target down repeatedly until they break or their brains rupture from the strain. He has a barrier spell that when he was alive couldn't be dispelled by some top-class A-rank hunters. There's also his ability Fear, which he can cast just with a look. It managed to paralyze A-rank hunters when he was alive and was even felt by Sung Jin-Woo from a distance. Moreover, as a shaman type, his magic comes in the form of hymns like the Hymn of the Blazing Fire, which launches fireballs, or the Fire Dragon, which lets him blast a breath of fire. Those are his more combative techniques. On top of that, he also shines in debuffing. The Hymn of Frenzy weakens its target, the Hymn of Slumber drains their stamina, and so on. He's also capable of a support class with humans that can create a shield around an ally and give massive boosts to strength. He can even make his team go through a berserk effect for more power, but at the cost of their thinking prowess. He also has quite a few feats in his belt. When Jin-Woo was first extracting him, he failed multiple times because of the sheer force of will that Tusk has in life. During the Jeju Island raid, he was instrumental in taking out large swaths of ants with his area of effect abilities. With the Orb of Avarice, Tusk was able to put a hole through the Monarch Baron, a feat few can claim. Overall, a versatile addition, as Jin-Woo had the heavy hitters, but they were more individual combat focus, while Tusk lent to areas of effect damage and support. Moreover, he retains a lot of his intelligence from when he was alive, so he often provides insight or strategic advice. Kaisel. Every heroic story has a trusty steed by their side, but for the successor of the Shadow Monarch, it needs to be something special, and Kaisel is exactly that. As the Shadow of Kaiselin, he was once the mount of the Monarch Baron before being defeated by Jin-Woo, extracted, and then named Kaisel because he forgot the original name. In terms of appearance, he's a large wyvern with black scales covering his entire body and a blue purplish aura surrounding him. Kaisel has impressive regeneration and transformation capabilities, like all shadows, including the power of shadow infiltration. In reality, Kaisel has never actually been used in a fight despite his impressive stature. Though he is still an elite knight grade, it's likely because the rest of Jin-Woo's army covers most of the bases and he'd rather have it for transportation. In fact, he's only really used to traveling long distances, which Sung Jin-Woo's shadow exchange doesn't cover. Beru. As a shadow of the Ant King, Beru is one of Sung Jin-Woo's strongest fighters, may it be before or after his death. He is a terrifying force. He was once a bloodthirsty monster from the Jeju Island S-rank gate who slaughtered over 8 S-rank hunters with ease. He can comfortably be said to be one of the strongest beings in the series. As the Ant King, he was raised and created by the Ant Queen to lead the ants and slaughter anyone who gets in their way. He proves this by eliminating the Japanese hunter with one strike and then killing most of the Korean ones when he witnesses his mother's death. He acquired the ability to heal from eating the body of Min Byung-gyu and continued to destroy the humans until Sung Jin-Woo arrived. Despite his impressive power, he was easily outmatched by the hunter in every way, and when he saw the ants being decimated by his shadow army, his arrogance turned to fear and he tried to run, but was cut down and turned into his shadow. Beru is a giant humanoid ant with pincers for a mouth and a thick black carapace covering his body. He has glowing neon eyes and a purple aura surrounding him. He's also capable of flight thanks to his wings and has the usual shadow skills granted to a general grade. Few characters in the series can match Beru's sheer strength, as he's capable of one-shotting an Archlich or raking the fingers of the insect Monarch. His speed is just as great, as he can zip around and dodge effortlessly with hyper reflexes, capable of flying from Jeju to Busan in mere minutes. He's also one of the most durable among others, able to take on Jin-Woo's blows even when Egis couldn't. As for the abilities he had when he was Ant King, most have stayed with him. For instance, the Gluttony ability allows him to absorb the skills and knowledge of anyone he consumes. He also has buffing skills like his Harsh Orders ability, which can boost a person's stat by 50%, though at the cost of their sanity. Then there is his size manipulation, which lets him boost his size, increasing his strength at the cost of his speed and agility, and the reverse, making him smaller and faster, but weaker. He can also heal to an impressive level, restoring Jin-Woo completely from the brink of death and even fixing himself up fine after their sparring match. Jima. During one of Sung Jin-Woo's dungeon raids, he encounters the Naga monsters, each one capable of taking on an A-rank hunter at a minimum. Jima is the shadow of the leader of these Nagas and has since acquired all shadow skills. In appearance, he's absolutely massive, with black scales, a purple underbelly, and a tail for a leg to slither with. Accompanying him are his dual tridents. While there are no real feats for the sea beast, he is at an elite knight grade, putting him on the same level as an S-rank hunter. Plus, as a Naga, his natural body is extremely resistant to damage thanks to their rather thick scales. His primary weapon is a trident, and he can use it with remarkable finesse. He also has the special ability to increase his size to massive levels and has the strength to destroy a giant in one hit. If you combine that with his trident skill, he can mow through armies like nothing. Greed. Sometimes death is not enough of a punishment, and that's the kind of thinking Sung Jin-Woo had when he extracted Greed, the shadow of Hwang Dong-soo. The reason for his creation is not exactly pleasant. After he tortured Jin-Woo's friend Jin-ho, Jin-Woo murdered the man and extracted him in order to continue his penance, and named him Greed for his actions. His old life as Hwang Dong-soo started this feud after hearing of his brother's death during a raid. He accurately deduced that either Jin-Woo or his friend Jin-ho were responsible and made it his mission to punish them for it. Unfortunately for him, the task proved to be complicated when Jin-Woo managed to survive a red gate, became a part of the Jeju Island raid, and was a representative for Korea at the International Guild Conference. The man was basically untouchable, and too risky for him to even try. Instead, he targeted the weaker of the duo, Jin-ho. Jin-Woo was immediately notified, and so he fought and killed the man, and now he remains as his shadow. Greed has a typical humanoid shape, with his more unique feature being the fractured white skull on half of his face, and the flaming purple aura coming from his upper back. As the shadow of an S-ranker, Greed was already equal to a general grade, his strength being so impressive that he could break out of the Ice Monarch's prison simply by flexing too hard. He's also capable of speech, and presents himself very humbly due to his past life's actions. Though Jin-Woo still has no real fondness for him, his regeneration is lightning fast and can infiltrate with the best of them. His transformation ability is also present, though I doubt Sung Jin Jin-Woo would ever want to touch him, Belion, the only Grand Marshal grade shadow in Sung Jin-Woo's arsenal. Belion is the lieutenant of the Shadow Army, a loyal follower of the Ashborn, and the undisputed strongest shadow in history. He was born eons ago from a massive tree called the World Tree, whose branches coiled blanket the entire world, and from that tree came a fruit that would become Belion. He eventually became the lieutenant of the Shadow Monarch Ashborn, and then the first ever shadow, serving in life and in death. Belion is perhaps one of the more non-humanoid of the humanoid shadows, with a rather angelic design to him but covered in pitch black armor and purple lighting. He has 2 pairs of black wings and carries a centipede-looking sword that functions as both a blade and a whip. After Sung Jin-Woo killed the 3 monarchs, Ashborn's original shadow army led by Belion arrived and swore their allegiance to the new shadow monarch Jin-Woo. He gained the Grand Marshal grade by almost instantly defeating Beru in a sparring match, Jin-Woo's strongest shadow at the time. It can't be stressed enough just how impressive that is. Beru has been one of the toughest characters in the series, excluding Sung Jin-Woo. Belion proved his unbelievable speed and dexterity with sheer finesse as he moved around the battlefield, especially against Beru, who couldn't even hit him. It was also in that fight that we see the unbelievable strength at his disposal, when he managed to overpower all of Beru's defense and knock him out in one hit. He may very well be second only to Sung Jin in strength. As for his weapon, he carries a massive black sword that can also transform into a whip. In terms of skill, he is a master swordsman and can cut through almost anything. Only Egis has been shown to have a better degree of skill in that regard, which is saying something. His whip form has quite a few different skills too, and he can use it to trap and immobilize his foes like he did with Beru. This guy here is the pinnacle of the Shadow Monarch forces, the first to acquire many of the shadow abilities we see being used. Despite the countless years he's been away, as soon as Jin-Woo saw this monster, he knew the dynamics of his army had changed. Honorable mentions: Min Byung-gyu. During the Jeju Island dungeon arc, Min Byung-gyu was one of the S-rank hunters participating in the raid. He unfortunately passed while he and his team were facing the Ant King. Min Byung-gyu tried to help his team with his healing by disguising himself to sneak around. Unfortunately, the Ant King still spotted him and devoured the hunter. He actually became a shadow of Sung Jin-Woo during this arc, when Jin-Woo extracted him in order to use his healing abilities to restore Cha-hae-in. He was then released because of a promise Jin-Woo made to Baek Yun-ho, who begged that Min Byung-gyu be granted peace. As such, he was only a shadow for a very brief period, though he was immediately at Elite Knight grade, which is no surprise for an S-rank hero. However, if he had stayed, Sung Jin-Woo would have had access to some incredibly powerful healing magic that nullified the Ant Queen's poisonous spit immediately, as well as some impressive buffing spells. When the Ant King absorbed Min Byung-gyu, his shadow was able to restore Jin-Woo completely thanks to that healing skill. Ant Queen. One of the primary forces in the Jeju Island S-rank gate, the Ant Queen was the mother of the Ant King, now Beru, and boss of the dungeon. Her story begins 4 years before the main story, when she took over the Jeju slang after the hunters failed to end her. She has been staying there, repelling every attempt to stop her thanks to her children. However, food was becoming scarce, so she created the Ant King in order to lead her children and expand her domain. During the Jeju Island arc, she was assaulted by several S-rank hunters and held her own for a while, but was eventually overwhelmed and decapitated. Later, Sung Jin-Woo used his shadow extraction skill to create her shadow for his army. However, he did soon release her since he felt she would be of no use. That's because while she was powerful and had the general grade mark, her main source of power was in her ability to give birth to many swarms of ants, commanding them and even mutating and evolving them to suit her needs. Still, the Ant Queen was a powerhouse, and she also had a special poison he could spit out of her mouth, powerful enough to badly damage Baek Yun-ho and Ma Dong-wook, who were S-rank hunters and had powerful defensive equipment. Kamish. Perhaps the most infamous of Sung Jin-Woo's shadows would be Kamish, the boss of the first S-rank gate that ever opened. He was initially a servant of the King of Dragons, the strongest monarch Antares. When the portal appeared in America, Kamish slaughtered hundreds of S-rank hunters and a good portion of the west coast of America. He was eventually beaten by the 5 remaining S-rank hunters in the country, and his body was taken by the government. Sung Jin-Woo was given the opportunity to check his corpse and used his extraction skill to raise his shadow in order to answer some questions about the rulers before his body started disintegrating because of how long he had been dead, leaving no way to summon him again. This was certainly a loss for Jin-Woo, since the dragon had been summoned at a general grade immediately and would have only gotten stronger. Kamish was one of the strongest dragons out there, capable of shattering a mana-proof glass with ease and surviving countless blows. His breath was capable of leveling cities, and his special skill, Dragon's Fear, was able to release a roar infused with mana that caused those weaker than him to panic and break down. Easily one of the most powerful creatures the series has shown. Unnamed shadows. Within the over 10 million shadows at his beck and call, not all of them are your classic human-esque monsters. In fact, Sung Jin-Woo kept a wide variety of creatures in his rank, and while they are not given names, they are still formidable, and their design makes them stand out. High Orcs. There are the High Orc shadows that Sung Jin-Woo acquired during his battle with Kargalgan. Each of them has a unique color scheme from the usual shadows. Here, most are themed in black and purple, but some are primarily red with the iconic tusks to mark them as orcs. They tower over the standard shadows, and they are no slouches in combat either, as many are the Berserker or Warrior type and were classified as A rank when they were alive, putting them in Knight grade. 4 of them were even assigned by Sung Jin-Woo to protect his sister using Shadow Infiltration. This also means they have the rest of the shadow abilities too. Ice Bears. Another type of shadow would be the Ice Bears that he acquired during the Red Gate incident. These creatures look quite similar to regular bears, with the Nuggets difference being their hulking size and the ice crystals in their chest. What makes them stand out is their resistance to ice-based effects, and they can even unleash blasts of ice too. They were B-rank creatures, so their shadows are of elite grade, capable of all the benefits that came with that rank. Ants. Then there's the ant shadows from the Jeju Island dungeon. Evolved from the Ant Queen, they're human-sized mutant ants that managed to keep Jeju Island for themselves for 4 years. Sung Jin-Woo acquired them when he essentially wiped out the dungeon. These are, at the minimum, B-rank monsters, though they can even contend with A-rank hunters, putting them in the elite grade at a minimum. A typical ant could fly at a speed of 150 kilometers and also possess some sense of strategy, like when they weeded out the weaker enemies during their fights. Nagas. Next would be the Nagas, A-rank creatures that are 2 or 3 times bigger than your average human and many times stronger. They essentially look like smaller versions of Jima, the shadow of the Naga leader, and Sung Jin-Woo acquired them all during the Ajin Guild's first A-rank gate. Their primary weapon would be the tridents they all have, their razor-sharp teeth, or their massive tail that could easily crush most enemies they rap on. Even Sung Jin-Woo acknowledged that these guys could match an A-rank hunter with their thick scales. Giants. Let's not forget the Shadow Giants. These monstrosities were extracted during the Tokyo S-rank gate raid, where they showed their infamous prowess, since many hunters often lose in those first steps. Giants, as their name implies, are absolutely massive, towering many buildings, so of course their strength is abnormal as a result. However, they aren't any less slow, as their quick movements and overwhelming strength help them cut down many S-rank hunters, which is why the Tokyo Gate is so infamous. When Sung Jin-Woo acquired them, these shadows became the strongest infantry in his army. Ashborn Army. Finally, there is the army of the Ashborn, the first Shadow Monarch. These creatures reach a mythological level in terms of design. Many look like a weaker version of Belion, the strongest shadow, but there are in fact many black-scaled dragons in the mix, likely acquired from his battle against the dragon monarch Antares. Like many shadows, they appear as they did in life, but are simply covered in black armor and purple auras. There's no question about the strength of these shadows, since they have often gone toe-to-toe with the other monarchs' forces. The 3 dragons alone are a massive threat to anyone, since together they could be an even greater threat than Kamish in terms of damage, based on government insight when they saw those behemoths. Moreover, these are the shadows that have been strengthened for many battles and were likely the first to benefit from the Shadow Monarch's gifts, and when their army was added to Sung Jin-Woo's, it was no surprise that he had never lost since.